Ginger was chosen as our chaperone, and then she had to be pulled off because the movie we were going to see had to be over a preview screening of a good movie. And anyway, that's the reason why Ginger was on our chaperone. So we chose Jana and John David. We thought, why not have a double date? We are from Arkansas, no. So we sit down to dinner, and I can't eat because, for one thing, I'm holding Anna's hand the whole time.
Cameras make good chaperones, don't they? Oh.
It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Tuesday, September 6th. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Back to school, back to life, back to reality. Over the weekend, I wanted to tell you about this amazing podcast I was listening to. It's called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. I might be way late to the scene because this podcast came out last year or early 2022. It's about Mark Driscoll, who is a pastor. He was part of like this reformed, neo-reformed movement that happened kind of in the early 2000s. He founded Acts 29, big church planter based out of Seattle. He had a huge church that collapsed overnight. And I ended up on this rabbit hole because Matt Chandler of Village Church stepped down abruptly last week after inappropriate DMs. A lot of you who know Matt or went to Matt's church, a former member of Matt's church was like, oh, you have got to check out Mark Driscoll. And I was like, I've heard his name. I just haven't really paid attention to him. And they were like, if you think that there's problems with Matt, you need to check out Mark, because Mark is someone that Matt often frequents with and he speaks with, and they were part of the same circles for a long time. And that should give you an understanding of like who Matt associates with. And I was like, okay, I can look into it. So then I ended up on the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, which is this huge church in Washington out of Seattle. And I just wanted to tell you that if you've gone through a bad church, a bad mega church, a church with a lot of growth, a lot of little accountability, where it seems sort of like all about profit, you've had a bad experience with a pastor, have gone through some religious ABUSE, or just, have done a little bit of deconstruction your own, I think this could be a really good podcast for you. And even not, if you're someone that's interested in learning more about sort of the evangelical cult side of things, I would classify the way that Mark does his worship and his church structure kind of cult-like. I wouldn't say he's full-on cult, but he has a lot of authoritarian control. And his new church down in Arizona has had a lot of allegations of being sort of cult-like. Julie Roys has done a lot of interviews on that topic, which I also started listening to Julie's podcast over the weekend, which great stuff. So anyways, if you're interested in learning more about that, I think it would be a good topic to bring to the channel. I wouldn't go over the podcast, but in general, just sort of talking about that whole subset of churches as we sort of deconstruct and look at the SBC and the overall plaguing issues that are within this world. So the Rise and Fall of Mars Hills, which is about a huge mega church that basically collapsed overnight. And it had to do with the leadership of Mark and all of the horrible things that he was doing to people. And there's stories from the people that were actually impacted, and like former business managers, former assistants, people that were pastors and leaders at the church, all speaking on it. Wonderful podcast, very in-depth. And I learned a lot about church structure I didn't even understand before. So if you're a nerd like me, check it out. I listened to it on it's through Christianity Today. I listened to it on YouTube, but you can check, it's out on I think it's on Apple Podcast. You can also find it out, I think, on Spotify. Christianity Today, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. Now, today we're going to talk about Anna Duggar, because last week I told you about how Priscilla Waller has this like harebrained idea that she was going to move Anna to Texas to have Jason build her a house down in Texas so she could be closer to Josh and also be closer to Priscilla, and everything would be great. Well, I told you that I suspected that this might be kind of a hard push or a hard thing for Priscilla to sell, because one, she wanted to allegedly get one of the brothers to build a house for Anna down in Texas, which wouldn't really work because they're licensed in Arkansas. And two, I just couldn't see Jim Bob and Michelle being like, yes, the kids can go down to Texas, because they're so incredibly close to those grandkids and obsessed with them. I just can't see Jim Bob being like, yes, Anna, leave. I could actually see them being more like, Anna, stay. So I told you I didn't think it was going to happen. But what I do think is going to happen is something's going on in Tontitown, and I think it is a zoning project, a housing project that the Duggars are looking into. Either they're going to be building houses or selling some lots, but here is what is going on. The Duggars own a ton of property, and they all live sort of by the Washington County dump. It's so, I can't imagine what it must smell like, but it's the waste management like area, right? It's beautiful property, but they're like very close to the dump. But because of that, property is inexpensive, and that was part of the reason why Jim Bob had ended up buying a bunch of land out there. And he not only has a huge chunk of property on the side of the road where he lives, he also owns like 55 plus acres on this other side of the street that he has owned for years that has just been zoned agricultural. There's nothing there at all. If you ever have watched Counting On, when they go and they do all of those, like, they did one where they were like digging into hay bales for some sort of like Duggar, it was like a scavenger hunt. It's over on that side of the street. So that property they own, and then there's another chunk that's like right next to it. And they have cows and pasture and all of that. So, and they go fishing, like Jessa's taking the kids fishing at the pond that's across the street. That's the Duggars property. So next to that 50 or 40 acres, there's another chunk of land that's like 17 acres that the Duggars own. And I think they might be thinking about building some houses there because Josiah Duggar just applied for a survey plat subdividing 17 acres into 3 separate lots and rezoning the property from agricultural to single family residential. And the properties are very close to the Duggars, so like across the street. And he's moved the property is not owned by Josiah, but I think Josiah might be the one that might be building on these properties because the Duggars signed off on the plat. They'd signed off on the tracts, so they've split 17 acres into 3 separate lots. It looks like they are going to be potentially looking to build a incidental subdivision. So it's like a small subdivision. So it looks like they're going to be building 3 separate homes. Jim Bob and Michelle owned this property. They purchased the property in 2014. So they've taken 17 acres. There's going to be a property on Arbor Acres, and it looks like there'll be 2 properties with potential access on Barrington, which is the road that's perpendicular. They've rezoned the property. It's being zoned now as residential, single family residential. They aren't bringing any water or sewer, so that might be well and septic out here, but it's going to be into 3 separate tracts. And the reason why I think this could be where they're going to potentially build a house for Anna is because in between the time frame of the arrest for Josh and the trial, there was this discussion at the Duggars house, and I heard about this from a source where Jim Bob was effectively saying that what they could do is build a house for Josh and Anna across the street, and that's where he had originally wanted them to move to begin with. And I think now that the Duggars are there and they're going to be stuck with Anna for say 10 years, I think it would be a lot to ask Anna or even the Duggars to stay in a house combined. Anna has a tense relationship with her in-laws. And I mean, if you're going to be completely honest, like if you've not been used to living with your in-laws and then you're suddenly living with your in-laws, wouldn't that be hard for you? So they already own the lots. They have builders in the house, in the family that could potentially donate their time and their money for the materials. And they already have relationships with suppliers and they're already in the building industry. So they could probably build her a house relatively affordable with their connections because they don't have to buy the property. They already own it. And again, they are already builders. Benefits because Josiah is a builder and so is Jason. So again, I think they might be building a place for Anna. I can't see the Duggars buying property near their house and selling it to a stranger. Because Jim Bob's plan when he was purchasing all this property was to have the kids close to him. And now knowing that Anna might need her own house, because she does, I think they might be thinking about building a house. And when, again, in between the trial, the arrest and the trial, the discussion was that they would build a house for Josh and Anna across the street. And I told you that Jana had sort of pushed back against them and said, no, that's my property. Well, it looks like that's probably not going to happen now. And it looks like there are 3 properties that might get built here. And one of those could end up going to Anna. So she would still be close to, if this is true. And I spoke to my source saying, like, do you think this could be them getting ready to build a house for Anna? And they said, potentially, yeah. So if she's going to move, I think they're going to get her into one of these 3 plots. And they're 5 and 6 acres, okay? Josiah is nothing has been transferred for warranty. No warranty deeds have been transferred, so technically the Duggars could still own the property, but it could just build a structure for them to live. Right now, living in an outbuilding or in a warehouse, which is not zoned as residential, is a huge problem, especially if she's got eyes like CPS on her. They're not gonna approve her to live in a barn or an outbuilding like she's living in right now. It's not zoned for occupancy. She needs to live in an owner-occupied home. So if she's got any eyes on her, they need to get her into a residence. So that's kind of my thought process. It looks like they're splitting property. Looks like they're going to be building some houses. Looks like Josiah is going to be involved in this. They might have Josiah like build one for Anna and then you can do one for 2. I don't know. Maybe Lauren and Josiah will move in. Who knows? Okay, another thing is, so there's this new thing happening right here with the Duggars. No new property purchases have been made by the Duggars at all. This also could be a way for the Duggars to transfer the lien. So in the event that they build a house there, Josh's permanent residence could then be at that house, not at his parents' house, and then the lien could transfer to the new home. Make sense? So one other thing is I got some emails over the weekend from people claiming to know the Duggars. And I just want to say, like, I appreciate any and all tips that you send me at tips@withoutacrystalball.com. But I'm just going to call this person out. I'm not going to say who sent it, but I want to just be extremely clear. Someone sent me a really distasteful email and said that Josiah and Lauren had a baby. And they said that the baby's name was Daisy Duggar. And the baby's name was born in April. And I just want to say, like, that's super troll. That's so, false, but Daisy Duggar is disgusting. And it's not funny because Daisy's destruction is what was tied to Josh. And there's no way I could see Josiah and Lauren naming a child Daisy. Not to mention Lauren and Josiah have not had another child. So there's been a lot of rumors that Josiah and Lauren had another baby. They have not had another baby. They have just Bella, and that's totally fine. They have privated their social media. They want to have a more low-key life, which is totally their right. They don't want to be online. They're still married. There's no trouble in paradise. Lauren doesn't like being in the spotlight. So we're going to respect that, but say, if you have a tip, don't troll like that. That's really inappropriate. And don't I'll always stick up for the Duggars, you guys. Like, even if I don't agree with everything they do, but some things just like cross lines. Another is like when you pretend to email me and you say you know them and it's so clear that you don't, and you say that you're a cousin, but I know for a fact you're not. I will verify anything that's sent to me in tips. And so just because you claim you know them, just want to be clear, I don't just take somebody's information at face value. I have very trusted sources that I work with that I can literally ask anything to, and they can tell me right off the bat, true, false, is this possibility? And if you send me something that's not true, I'm going to verify. So you're not going to hold one over. And that one person sent me an email and said, Jana moved and she's living with a roommate. And I was like, yeah, no, that still hasn't happened. All right. So what do you think about the possibility of them moving Anna across the street? What do you think about them building houses? Do you think they're building a compound? Are they building is he going to get the rest of the kids over there? What are they going to do with these new parcels of land? And why do you think the Duggars neighbors are moving? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.